Paula Vanessa Llewellyn, CD, QC, the Director of Public Prosecution. Born Paula Vanessa Llewellyn was appointed the first female Director of Public Prosecutions in Jamaica. On graduating from St. Hugh's High School, Ms. Llewellyn embarked on the study of law at the University of West Indies and completed her program in 1984. In that same year, she was appointed to the position of Clerk of Court in St. James Resident Magistrates Court. From there, she was appointed to Crown Counsel at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And within 7 years of working at the office, Ms. Llewellyn was appointed Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. In March 2008, Ms. Paula Llewellyn was appointed the first female Director of Public Prosecutions in Jamaica. In 1999, prior to her appointment, Ms. Llewellyn became the first woman to serve as Acting Director of Public Prosecutions. And in 2003, she became first woman to be appointed as Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. Following her appointment in May and August 2008, respectively, Ms. Llewellyn was appointed as Her Majesty's Queen's Counsel and was conferred with the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander. In November, the Director was the recipient of the Civil Service Long Service Medal for 25 years in the public service. As the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Llewellyn is also the designated Central Authority of Jamaica for the execution of mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. Ms. Llewellyn has over 30 years of experience as criminal law legislator, having prosecuted complex criminal cases, some of which were of exceptional public interest in the courts of different jurisdictions. Ms. Llewellyn pioneered the prosecution of the first case in Jamaica involving DNA and cell site data analysis. Ms. Llewellyn, who enjoys delivering motivational speeches, has been an associate tutor at the Norman Manley Law School for approximately 10 years and has also made presentations on a variety of legal subjects, both locally and internationally. Ms. Llewellyn has one daughter and attends the St. Mary's Anglican Church, right? PP Lincoln. She is also a member of the International Association of Prosecutors and the Trailblazers Toastmasters Club. She believes that professionalism and excellence must be the heart of service above self to her fellow citizens. Service above self. I love that. All right, fellow Rotarians and guests, please help me in welcoming our guest speaker, Ms. Paula Llewellyn.
Thank you very much. Is it President Andrew?
Yes.
And good afternoon to all of your colleague Rotarians. I see Lincoln, who I grew up with at St. Mary's. But Lincoln, I think age and time has been a little kinder to me. Oh my goodness. He was a little older than I was. That's a shadow. But it's good to see you, Lincoln. The Dean family, they were part of the pillars of the Church of St. Mary's. Now, the subject I have chosen today, gentlemen, I could speak, ladies and gentlemen, I could speak for 2 days on it, but we only have about 15 minutes. And I would wish to give you the opportunity to cross-examine the DPP. So I will try to be as tight as possible. Now, it takes a village to raise a child. It is the myth or reality in light of what is happening today when we speak about child abuse. We've just come out of Child's Month, so I thought that I would seek to focus your minds on this. The front page, and I have it here, of the Sunday Observer, just on Sunday here, May 30, indicated, it screamed, relief for woman raped at 11. Attacker was seeking a cure for HIV. So he targeted a virgin and she received an infection of HIV. However, due to positive intervention over the years and the evolution of the treatment, it is now almost undetectable, and she's happily married and she has 2 children. We have another aspect of the whole issue of child abuse, where just recently, a very brave and courageous young lady, she's about 21, 22 now, you may recall that she was complaining about the fact that having given evidence against her father, and he was convicted and he received life, the Court of Appeal, she thought, were perhaps unkind by cutting that down to 15 years. And it so happens that she was a victim of what we could call intergenerational sexual abuse, because her mother her mother had been a stepdaughter, so was her mother's sister of the same accused, and she was the progeny of the rape or carnal abuse of her father with her mother. And unfortunately, her mother, who was Bahamian, had left the island and left her in a situation where she ended up back in the care of her father. And at 13, he started using her as his concubine, so to speak, and demanded sex. He raped her, and the rest is history. But according to her, she broke the generational curse by giving evidence, and he was convicted. And then we have, when you talk about child abuse, there's also cruelty to children, which is covered in Section 9 of the Child Care Protection Act. And I can think of 2 recent stories in the newspapers. One, where we had 2 children, age 3 and 1, who perished in a house fire in St. James. The mother had gone, the usual story, gone to the shop. And according to the father, they were on television crying. The father was saying that he had left some money for the mother to go to the shop. I asked myself the question, then one of them couldn't stay while the other one went to the shop? You wouldn't leave a 1-year-old and 3-year-old together. And regrettably and unfortunately, the children perished in this board structure. Then you had the situation in Westmoreland, where a 6-year-old boy was shot and killed by his cousin. His cousin was 15, and the mother there again, she not only went to the shop for herself, she went to the shop as well for a neighbor in the yard. And she left 6-year-old, I think 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old in her section of the yard. And eventually the 15-year-old turned himself in, but he didn't come in with the gun. He was charged for murder. But guess what? The 6-year-old is dead. The 3 and 1-year-old, they are dead. We have, as has been said by a lot of our social commentators, and we can observe, Jamaica has such a wonderfully rich culture in terms of our music, our sports, music of all types. But there is this underbelly, well, it's more than an underbelly, of violence, which a lot of us as adults, a lot of us as well, who have children. These children have to observe the violence. But unfortunately, you have child abuse from our files now as prosecutors throughout the different, dare I say, classes, throughout the different socioeconomic sectors. But as a prosecutor, I will say that the great majority of what we see and we have to bring to the courts as prosecutors reside in a lot of low socioeconomic environments. And it is so tragic. I mean, usually as DPP, I will be involved in going to the Court of Appeal or prosecuting a complex murder case. For example, recently my last prosecution, which was completed, was a 2-month case involving the murder of Bonnie Francis, which some of you may have known. But I went to the Westmoreland Circuit Court, first time in a little while I'm going on circuit. And my staff said to me, Ms. Llewellyn, you're seeing what we have to deal with in terms of some of these sexual offense cases or offense against the person cases involving children. And I had occasion to speak to a couple of the mothers, 2 or 3 of the mothers of these children who had been sexually assaulted, either by the stepfather or one mother was assaulted by the father of her 4 children. She had 4 children at the age of 23, and 2 of them now are residing with the mother of the accused. And the prevailing factor that connected a lot of these fact patterns, and when I speak to other prosecutors, would be poor supervision or lack of supervision. A lot of the parents, so-called, don't understand what it means to be a parent. I remember once I spoke to a witness in a case. He, at the age of 53, he proudly indicated, much to the amusement of his friend who was with him, he was a mason, that he had 15 children. And I asked him, how you manage? How you manage 15 children in this day and age? And I never forget, he laughed and he said, well, Miss Llewellyn, I made sure that 9 of the mothers of those children, that they all work. That's what he said. 9 of them worked. So he has 15 children spread over 9 mothers. And he says, that is how I'm able to manage. But what we don't see, ladies and gentlemen, and we see it in the facts, is when you have the relationship breaking down, when you have a lot of resentment and frustration in the very same mothers, because the fathers are not able to manage, or the fathers have disappeared. They don't see the fact of the mothers entering into other relationships with other partners. And on occasion, we have seen it in the files, where everybody is sleeping on the same bed. Now, I am known for the expression of being in the trenches. And ladies and gentlemen, please pardon me and forgive me if I have to take you out from the top of the Eiffel Tower or out of the bubble that you may live in. Because what the police and we as prosecutors see, sometimes you go on what we call the locus, you may have to go to where the mother or another relative is to try to beg them, plead with them to come to court. You will have situations where, because the mothers, you have some mothers pimping out their girls. As soon as the child reaches 12, 13, the mother isn't working. And they will pimp out the child either to the stepfather or to other men in the community. You have what we are seeing, a high sexualizing of some of our children, because the smartphone, which a lot of our children have access to, because they will play with a smartphone belonging to their caregivers or their mothers or their fathers or their elder siblings. And you now have pornography readily available to a lot of these children. When I started out as a young prosecutor, some 30 years ago, I hope Lincoln I'm wearing well. But when I started out as a young prosecutor, yes, you had cases of rape and carnal abuse. But what we are finding now as prosecutors is a heavy sexual component in terms of you see a child of 16 or a person of 17 raping or having sex with a child under 16, which is an offense. And invariably, you will find oral sex being a part of the scenario. Or we have even seen buggery, where a young child is being buggered by a young man. And very often you will see in the fact pattern material from which you can infer that this young person who is the accused is clearly being exposed to pornography. There is a case, it still has not yet been heard in Westmoreland, that I came across, and the allegations are quite grave. At 13, a young boy, according to the allegations, held a 9-year-old down in the bushes. When I looked at the post-mortem, that child, that is the victim, was only about 50, 55 pounds at 9. And she was strangled, and she was also sexually assaulted. And that young man, of course, has been incarcerated in a juvenile center ever since. When I spoke to the mother of the victim, and it really brought to bear just how unfortunate the situation is. Because when you look at the mother of the accused boy, you could see the sadness, but you could also see the fact that she's in denial. It's an allegation, but this evidence, it couldn't be her son who could have allegedly done this. When I spoke to the mother of the victim, this had been her youngest of, I think, 3 or 4 children. And you saw this haunting look, this sadness. And she tried to tell me how much she tries to take care of her children. But the child had been along with other children coming from school. This is a rural area. There was a time when kids could walk even in the night just with the aid of a bottle torch or the pinawali and walk from point A to point B. And the mother or the father would feel sure that their child would get home safe and unharmed. But in the 21st century, we are in a different time. We're in a time where violence is celebrated in part of the popular culture, in song. We're in a time when you have the informer for dead mentality, and you have the I don't want to be an informer. And my words now, you have in a lot of communities what I would call an accommodation of criminality. So instead of the village taking care of the child and the persons within that village prepared to stand up and be counted and to call out persons within the community to report to the police, as the Child Care Protection Act says in Section 6, there's a duty to report the situation where children are obviously in need of care and protection. What you have now at different levels of the society, sometimes it even includes members of the political class, because persons don't want to rock the boat. People don't want to be unpopular. So instead of calling out a mother who constantly leaves her very young children alone, when the fire comes and the children are killed in the fire, what you will hear is not persons who want to give statements to the police. You will hear, oh, she was a good mother. Boy, I'm sorry for her. Not the fact that this is a mother who used to leave her children and go to party, or leave her children and go to the shop and leave them unattended. So I say to myself, well, if the village is now allowing child abuse in plain sight, it's hidden in plain sight. Because when you drill down, whether with the police or you talk to one or two of the relatives or the witnesses, it's quite clear that child abuse, physical, sexual, emotional neglect, pornography, that it is well known. You always have persons who know. But there's a saying in law called willful blindness. It's just more comfortable to yield to the willful blindness, to allow these abuses to be hidden in plain sight, to look the other way because I don't want to be an informer. Well, my challenge to you all is to be that facilitator of being an informer within your particular sphere of operations. Encourage members of your family, encourage members of your church, encourage members of your club to be an informer. Because this sort of thing is not only happening, though it happens most often in the lower socioeconomic bracket. I have personally seen doctors before the court charged for sexually assaulting a stepdaughter. I have spoken to mothers from Upper St. Andrew who have had these issues to deal with. But what happens in Upper St. Andrew is that invariably the child is sent abroad or taken abroad to go to school and be in a totally different environment. In the lower socioeconomic bracket, most 90% of those mothers or other caregivers, they don't have that particular avenue open to them. So what then? Because I don't like to be so pessimistic. I could tell you about the case that I read, and I had to enter a nollie, where for the mother of a 6-year-old who had been sexually assaulted by her stepfather, he was arrested and charged after this very intelligent 6-year-old reported the matter to her aunt who lived up the road. But the aunt recalled in the statement that I read that the child, even after the accused had been arrested, her stepfather, leaving the mother there, who she would visit from time to time, she lived with the aunt. She was still wetting her bed. She was still defecating in her bed. She was still having a lot of nightmares. And when the aunt made inquiries and really sat her down, because the child was very intelligent, it was discovered, and they took a further statement, that the child, when she would visit her mother, this is after the mother's boyfriend had been arrested, would still have these recurring nightmares because it was the mother who used to hold the child down and put her fingers in the child's vagina in order to allow her boyfriend to gain entry to the child's vagina. And I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, although a lot of persons like to say this DPP has a very broad back, when I read the further statements, I remember I got up from my chair and I had to walk around my office and take a deep breath and drink some water because I was so shocked. I was so shocked. Because here am I thinking, I've not seen it all, but I've seen quite a bit, but I've never seen one like that. So immediately we entered an alley. The mother was charged for aiding and abetting her boyfriend in terms of having sex with this child who is under 16, and preferred a voluntary bail in the circuit court. And one of my deputy directors tried the matter, conducted the prosecution, and both boyfriend and the mother, they were convicted. And the interesting thing about it is I understand the child gave very good evidence, but at no time during the case did she ever refer to the accused woman as a mommy. She simply called her by her name. But she gave excellent evidence and they were convicted. But when I look at the Sunday Observer, looking at the 11-year-old, now a woman, in terms of what occurred to her because of a cultural myth. So here again, ignorance sometimes. So you have lack of supervision, careless parenting, sometimes ignorance, and this belief in some of these cultural myths that can cause willful blindness on the part of others. So each and every one of us, I charge you in a positive way to be part of the alliance of the law-abiding, to be unafraid, not to be willfully blind, to be prepared to stand up and be counted, and to call out even your friend, even a member of your family, if you suspect that they are engaged in some form of child. You cannot subscribe to the I don't want to be an informer mentality. Another case I'll share with you, where an assistant director who was going to be going on a circuit, and she asked my advice, what to do. She shared with me that the file revealed husband and wife, nice house, and the wife was there using the mop to mop in the living room when she heard the 9 or 10-month-old baby that she had in her baby's room screaming out, squealing. And she went to the doorway, and what did she see? Her husband, the child's father, using his penis to rub around the child. The child was a girl's genitalia. You would think that having reported the matter, because he was charged for grievous sexual assault, to the police, that she would, that is the mother, she would have stayed the course to complete the prosecution, because she's the only one who can give the evidence. But what happened? She moved out, she and the baby out of the community. And when the matter came up in court, the prosecution's hands were tied because it had been on the list for some time. And the police indicated that it's as if the lady has vanished off the face of the earth. I suspect that she probably took the baby and went abroad. And also what sometimes happens is that relatives of the accused will seek whether to pay off the complainants, pay off the mothers of the complainant or the caregiver to take the child away, leave the area, leave the school, so that the administration of justice cannot be completed. Very often, a lot of persons who are not so informed about what happens in the trenches, very often saying, what is the police doing? Why can't the police so and so and so and so? Ladies and gentlemen, the best persons to safeguard the administration of justice are the citizens themselves. Because a police officer cannot sleep in every home, in every yard. But the people are there who are seeing and suspecting and knowing when children are being abused. So it is the people who would be the best guardians of justice if they would only, like that young lady who stepped up to the plate to break, as she called it, the generational curse. Just step up to the plate. But I can tell you, I am one DPP who, if it is that I get a file that shows clearly the ingredients of the offense of breaching of Section 9, that is cruelty to a child, especially where you have a situation where children have been left alone, I will say to the police, okay, she has a day or two to cry, or even longer. But do not let that distract you from making sure that prosecution is initiated and she's arrested and charged or summoned to court to answer for that breach of the Child Care Protection Act. So I have a split screen. Yes, I'm a parent and I can understand the anxiety of any parent who sees that their child has been killed in this fire. But as DPP, without even batting an eyelid, I will immediately rule or advise that you be prosecuted. Because who speaks for the children? Who speaks for the children? It is so sad. I went to Westmoreland and I had to deal with a matter. I had the victim support persons there. They don't have enough hands. They don't have enough hands to be able to go into some of these communities. But I am going to ask you as members of the Alliance of the Law Abiding, whether through your club or other service clubs, to urge the government in terms of releasing more resources. We need to triple the number of social workers. We need to somehow get resources to have a sustained, maintained public education program, which is targeted at some of these communities, that to show that it is not right to think of it as just a little sex, because that is the mentality of a lot more people than you would know. That would cause them to look the other way or be willfully blind. They think it's just a little sex, not thinking of the emotional and physical harm that will follow those children way into the future. Sometimes that causes some of these children to run away. And I'm going to share with you a beautiful story in closing, because I see the time is going. Two of my prosecutors at various times had to interact with a lady and her husband in what is called a historical sexual abuse case. You have a species of case or a special category of case whereby you may be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right up to 16 as a child. And you, in this case, she had been sexually assaulted multiple times by her stepfather. Her mother became willfully blind and looked the other way because her father was the main provider economically in that family. And the mother refused to say anything. Well, this lady is grown up, just like this young lady here that was spoken about in the Sunday Observer. And she's in her 30s. She was married, well married, you know, had her 3 children, well spoken. And she went to the police and made a report about what her stepfather used to do when she was a teenager and younger. So it's what is called a historical sexual abuse. And you have case law that has gone to the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council detailing this type and category of case. And we worked with her. And the matter came to court. The accused, her stepfather, was before the court. Her mother is still married to the stepfather. And I gather that she started to give the evidence and the accused spoke to his lawyer and changed his plea. I gather he was practically in tears. Changed his plea to guilty, and he was sentenced to a term of years. Ladies and gentlemen, about 3 days after the matter was concluded, I got a call on my office telephone. A gentleman, very well spoken, he said, Miss Llewellyn, I trust you don't know me, but I am the husband of so and so and so. She was the complainant in a case that was concluded 3 days ago. And I want to commend your Crown Counsel who dealt with her and dealt with this matter in a very sensitive way. And Miss Llewellyn, I just want you to know that my wife and I, we have 3 children. And you would know how we had the 3 children in the usual way of procreation. But Miss Llewellyn, since the case has been completed, no, I think he called me the weekend after. It wasn't 3 days, the weekend after. The case concluded like the Thursday. Weekend passed and he called me the Monday. And he said, Miss Llewellyn, I want you to know that since the closure is the best sex that I have had with my wife since we have been married. And he was going on, ladies and gentlemen, to detail. I just stopped him immediately after that. I said, Mr. So-and-so, I think now this is too much information. I will convey to Crown Counsel your gratitude and appreciation, and may I wish for you and your wife all the very best. He was just laughing. Now here it is, at least 20-something years after the sexual assault by her stepfather. It had gone with her, and it was not until she stepped up to the plate, broke that curse, and actually spoke about what had happened to her, saw the process through to conclusion, saw that the administration of justice worked, that her husband, I don't even think that, I wonder if he ever told her that he called me to say that in all the time that they have been married, and they have 3 children, is the best sex they are both having. So, in closing, I believe that public education is going to be critical. I believe that thinking outside of the box and imaginative sexual education programs in the school, I am told that it is there, but perhaps it's not as widespread as we would need to have it. Because we have to recognize that in some of these homes, the whole issue and concept of sexual education means nothing, because you will have intergeneration from grandmother to mother to daughter, the concept that your body is to be objectified, that you are to be highly sexualized, that you are to look the other way because if you have a gentleman or a man seeing to providing economic benefits, then it means that you must subjugate yourself. I would like to hope and think that from a policy perspective, this need for positive public education is recognized. The need for more social workers to work with people and to help to educate them in some of these disadvantaged communities, and to perhaps also educate a lot of our young boys that what they will see or be exposed in terms of pornography, which helps to objectify a lot of women, that will cause them to want to experiment and to try out on very young children what they have seen. We need to have sustained public education, whether from official sources or at the behest of clubs like yours in Big Brother programs or Big Sister programs. We need to have our young ladies know that the way to break the generational curse is to make sure that you are educated and or that you have a skill that you can earn. We need to go back to some aspect of the two is better than too many, so that a lot of our persons in our society do not just look and subscribe to what I call the theory of mendicancy, that you have 3, 4, 5 children by the time you are 25 and you're just looking for a handout, or you're looking for baby father number 3, baby father number 4, baby father number 5. And when that baby father comes into the home now, he's going to, because all of them are sleeping on one bed, prey on the child coming up, age 10, age 11, age 12, age 13. We have to talk about these things. We have to talk about and sustain the conversation. And we have to be prepared to point out in a lot of these communities that it is wrong. We have to stand up and be counted. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated, I could go on for the whole day with the host of stories, the host of cases that we see in our files, what we try to do in our own way. We are prosecutors, we are not social workers. The police too have a job and a role, and I see they're trying to be creative in terms of dealing with abuse, dealing with child abuse. CISOCA too, but in the final analysis, it is only through targeted intervention, whether in terms of public education, working with social work workers, and service clubs like you, that you have here, working with members of the community and not being willfully blind and facing down. Be prepared to be the man or the woman in the mirror, saying to members of the community, it is not right to abuse your children. It is not a situation of just a little sex. Children deserve to have a normal childhood where they feel that they can, with education, take advantage of the opportunities that education gives them to come out of negative circumstances. And I also, again, will say in my humbly, because the sentencing guidelines are a matter for the judges, but it is supposed to be a living document. And perhaps the time has come, sometime between now and the end of the year, where another committee can be set up for the sentencing guidelines to be reviewed, given what is happening in the country. I would also call upon the church not to retreat, not to back away. You see, what has happened is that a lot of dysfunction is taking place. Once upon a time, the church and other religious entities would be prepared to be that man in the mirror and to face down a lot of the antisocial behavior and a lot of the dysfunction, which helps to foster child abuse in all its forms. So we all have to be a part of the alliance of the law-abiding, and we have to be prepared to step up to the plate and to say, let it really be a village, people being prepared to do the right thing, to be unafraid, to have courage, to remember that wonderful African proverb, it does take a village to raise a child in a positive way, to be a contributor to what it means to be a positive citizen for Jamaica land we love. Thank you very much.